nachman meuman nachman meuman. With these people whom he drew the middle of the beginning of the story. With these people whom he drew close to Hashem Yisborach. With these people whom he drew close to Hashem Yisborach, a big fast of mortification was more precious than all the delights in the world, because they had delights from the great mortification or from the fast. More than from all the delights in the world. And the day came past, and the day came to pass, and there was a country that had great riches there. They were all rich, only their way and conduct was very strange and odd, because everything was conducted with them according to the riches. Everyone's value and everyone's honor was only according to his riches. For whoever had so many thousands or myriads had a certain class, and whoever had so much money had another class, etc. The whole world, the whole order of classes was with them according to the money of each and every person. And whoever had so many thousands or myriads, according to the amount that was determined by them, was king. And likewise they had banners, that whoever had so much money was in this banner and had the class and the status in that banner, and whoever had so much money was in another banner and had there some class in that banner according to the value of his money. And so it was fixed with them how much money someone needed to be considered in the class of the banner, and how much money he should have to be considered in another banner, and have there some kind of class and status. And so the status and class of each and every one was all according to his money, according to what was determined by them. And likewise it was fixed with him that when he had so much money, he was a plain human, and if he had less than this, he was a bird, etc. And they had beasts and fowl, i.e. when he had only so much, he was called a human lion, in Yiddish, a mensch l'chalev, and so forth, other beasts and fowl, etc., i.e. according to his little money. He was only a beast or bird, etc., because the main thing with them was money, and the class and level of each person was only according to his money. And it was heard in the world that there was such a country, and the prayer leader would make a big sigh over this and would say, who knows how far they can go and err through this. And there were found men from the people of the prayer leader, and they did not ask his opinion at all, and they went there to that country to bring them back, because he had great compassion on the country that had been so led astray in the craving of money, and especially because the prayer leader said that they could go and stray more and more. Therefore these people of the prayer leader went to that country. Perhaps they could bring them out of their nonsense. They entered the country, and they approached one of them. Apparently they approached some animal, assumedly. Apparently they approached some animal, i.e. a person who was of low status, for he had a small amount. So he was called an animal by them, and they began to chat with them that truthfully money is no goal at all, and the main purpose is only to perform devotions to Hashem. But he did not listen to them all, because he was already rooted in their thinking that the main thing was only money. And so they chatted with another one, and he also did not listen to them, and they wanted to chat with him more. But he replied, I have no more time to chat with you. They asked him why. He replied, because we all must leave the country and go to another country, because we have seen that the main goal is only money. Therefore it has become ingrained in us that we must go to such a country where they make money, i.e. there is earth from which they make gold and silver. Therefore we must all now go to that country. It also got into them that they should have stars and constellations too, i.e. whoever had such an amount of money, according to the amount they determined for it, he should be a star. Because since he had so much money, he has the power of the star, because the star grows the gold, because the fact that there is earth from which they make gold is only because of the star that grows gold. Earth in that place, therefore the gold is drawn down from the star. And because someone has so much gold, therefore he has the power of that star. Therefore he himself is a star. And likewise they said that they wanted to have constellations too. When someone had so much money, according to what they determined, he should be a constellation. And likewise they made themselves angels, all according to money, until they agreed that they should have gods too. Because someone who had very much money, such and such thousands and myriads, according to what they determined for this, he should be a god, because since God has given him so much money, he himself is a god. Nanach, nachman, nachman, meuman. They also said that they could not at all dwell in the air of this world, and they must not at all mix with other people, so that they should not contaminate them, because the other people of the world are completely impure compared to them. Therefore they decided they should find themselves very high mountains that are higher than all the rest of the world, and they should dwell there, so that they can be higher than the air of the world. They sent people to seek high mountains, and they found very high mountains. The whole country went and settled there on the high mountains. On each mountain a gathering of people from the country, a city settled, and around the mountain they made a big reinforcement and great trenches around the mountain, so that there would be no way a man could come, a different man, not from their country, a man could come to them, because there was no longer only a hidden path to the mountain, so that another person would not be able to come to them at all. And likewise on the next mountain, and so on all the mountains, they all made a reinforcement, etc., as mentioned, and they appointed guards far from the mountain, so a foreigner could not come to them. And they dwelled there on the mountains, and they behaved as mentioned earlier, and they made many gods, i.e. according to wealth, as mentioned, because wealth was the main thing for them, so much so that a great wealthy person could become a god. Therefore they had fear of murder and theft, because anyone could become a murderer or thief in order to become a god via the money he would steal. But they said, since the wealthy one is a god, he will protect himself from theft and murder. And they established devotions and offerings. So they would bring offerings and would pray to their gods, and they would sacrifice themselves to get to the gods in order to be included in them, and thereafter being reincarnated and be rich, because their main faith was in wealth. And they had devotions and sacrifices and incenses with which they served their gods, i.e. those who had much money. But certainly despite this, the country was full of murder and theft, because whoever did not believe in the devotions was a murderer and a thief in order to get wealth, because the main thing for them was wealth, because through wealth one could buy anything, food and clothes, and the source of a man's life was through money. Such was their foolish and confused mind, and they all tried to not lose any money, because money was for them only entirely the faith and the God. On the contrary, they needed to bring money into the country from other lands. Traders would go out from them to other countries in order to win money, in order to bring even more money into the country. And charity was certainly a great prohibition for them, because one gives away the money that God has given him, which was the main thing, to have money, and he blemishes and reduces his money. Therefore it was certainly a prohibition for them to give charity. And they had officers who would oversee everyone, whether he had as much money as he said, because each person had to always show his wealth in order to remain in his class that he had according to his money. And sometimes an animal would become a person, and a person an animal. When one lost his money, then he was no longer a man. A man became an animal because he had no money, and so on with the other classes. According to the money as mentioned, they had forms. Also, sometimes a person would stop being a god. He lost his money. He was once a god. Now he's not a god anymore. And they had forms and portraits of the gods, i.e. those who had much money, and everyone had the portraits. and they would hug and kiss them, because money was their whole devotion and faith. And the people of the prayer leader returned to their land, and they told the prayer leader of the nonsense of the country, how very lost they were in their craving of money, and that they wanted to leave their country to go to another country where they make money, and they wanted to make stars and constellations. The prayer leader answered that he feared lest they stray more and more. Afterwards it was heard that they made themselves gods. The prayer leader answered that this is what he feared and worried of from the start. The prayer leader had great pity on them and decided to go personally there. Perhaps he would return them from their error. And the prayer leader went there and came to the guards who stand around the mountain. And the guards, it would reason, were people of low status, who were able to stand in the air of this world, because people who had status from money were not able to be together with people of the world, so that they not be contaminated, and they were not able to speak at all with people of the world, so that they not contaminate them with their breath. Therefore surely the gods who stood outside the city were of low status as mentioned, but the gods also had the images of the gods that would hug and kiss them all the time, because with them too was money the main object of faith. And the prayer leader came to one of the gods and began speaking with him about the ultimate purpose, saying the only godly, that only godly devotion are the ultimate goal, Torah and prayer and good deeds, etc. And money is foolishness and not the ultimate purpose at all, etc. But the God did not listen to him at all, for it was already long sunken into them that the main thing is money, as mentioned. And likewise the prayer leader went to another god and spoke with him likewise as mentioned, and he did not listen to him either. And so he went to all the guards, but they did not listen to him at all. And the prayer leader made a decision, and he went into the city which was on the mountain. He settled his mind, and he went into the city which was on the mountain. When he arrived there, it was a wonder to them. And they asked him, "Now did you get in here?" Since no one was able to answer into them, he answered them, "Since I have already entered in whatever manner, why do you ask?" And he began speaking with one about the ultimate purpose, etc. But he did not listen to him at all, and likewise with another. And so all of them, they were already sunken in their mistake. And it was a wonder to the people, and it was a wonder to the people, and it was a wonder, and it was a wonder, and it was a wonder to the people of the city, that a man had come to them and was speaking to them such things, the complete opposite of their faith, nanach, nachma, meuman. And they felt in themselves, perhaps this man is the prayer leader, for they had already heard that there is such a prayer leader in the world, because the matter of the prayer, a leader, had already become publicized in the world, and they called him the pious, and they called him the pious prayer leader. But it was impossible for them to recognize and capture him, because he would make himself appear different to each person. To one he appeared as a merchant, and to another as a pauper, etc. And immediately he would break away from there. And he broke away quickly away from that place. And immediately he broke away from there. And the day came to pass, there was a mighty warrior, literally mighty, unto whom other warriors, literally mighty ones, had gathered, and the warrior and his warriors were going around, conquering countries, and he wanted nothing more than that they should surrender to him. And when the people of the country surrendered themselves to him, he would let them be, and if not, what, he would destroy them. But the was he went around conquering, not wanting any money, only surrender. That they should submit themselves to him, and the way of the warrior was, he would send his warriors to a country when he was still very far from it, 50 parsas, that they should submit themselves to him, and so he would conquer countries. Nanach, nachman, meuman, nachma, nachman, meuman. and the merchants of this country of wealth, who would go to trading in other countries, returned to their country and told them about this warrior, and a great terror fell on them. And even though they were willing to surrender to him, the thing that prevented them was that they heard that he loathes money and does not want any money at all. And this was the opposite of their faith. Therefore, it was impossible for them to surrender to him, because for them it would be like apostasy. Since he did not believe at all in their faith, that is, in money, and they were very afraid of him, and they began to perform devotions and bring sacrifices to the gods, to those who had much money, and they would take a beast, that is, someone with little money, who was considered by them as a beast, and bring him as a sacrifice to the gods, as mentioned, and other such devotions. And the warrior was continually coming closer to them, and he sent his warriors on ahead to ask them what they wanted, as was his way. They were terrified, they did not know what to do. Their own merchants gave them an advice, that they had been to a country, that they had been to a country where all the residents, that they had been to a country where all the residents were gods, and traveled with angels, that is, everyone in the entire country, from the smallest to the greatest, were all extraordinarily wealthy. We're all extraordinarily wealthy, to the extent that even the smallest among them was also a god by their folly, because the smallest among them was exceptionally wealthy and possessed the amount of money that was reckoned to make him a god. And they travel with angels, since their horses are covered with such great wealth. And they travel with angels, since their horses are covered with such great wealth, with gold and so forth. And the covering of one horse was worth the amount that an angel had. And the covering of one horse was worth the amount that an angel had. Thus the riders travel with angels, tying 3 pairs of angels, tying 3 pairs of angels to a carriage and riding with them. Therefore they needed to send to this country, for they surely would be able to help them, for they were all gods. And this was their merchants' advice, and their advice satisfied them very much, for they believed that surely they would be saved by them, since they were all gods, as mentioned. Nanach, nachma, meuman, and the prayer leader decided to go again to that country. Perhaps he could yet lead them out of their nonsense. And he went in there, and he arrived at the gods, and he began speaking with one guard, as he was accustomed. The guard told him about this warrior, that they were terrified of him. The prayer leader asked him, "What do you want to do?" The guard told him, as mentioned above, that they want to send to the country where they are all gods, etc. The prayer leader laughed exceedingly, at him, and said to him, "That is all great foolishness, because they are humans like us, and all of you, including your gods, are only humans, and are not any god at all. There is only one God in the world, who created everything, and him alone is it fitting to worship, and him alone it is fitting to worship, and to him alone it is fitting to pray, and only this is the ultimate purpose in the world." In such other words did the prayer leader speak with the God. The prayer leader laughed exceedingly at him and said to him, "That is all a great foolishness, because they are humans like us, and all of you, including your gods, are only humans and are not any god at all. There is only one God in the world, who created everything, and him alone it is fitting to worship, and to him alone it is fitting to pray, and only this is the ultimate purpose in the world." In such other words did the prayer leader speak with the God, but the God did not listen at all, because their mistaken belief was already set within them a long time. Yet the prayer leader, but the God did not listen at all, because their mistaken belief was already set within them a long time. Yet the prayer leader proceeded to speak much with him, until finally the God answered him, "What more can I do? I am only one individual, and there are compared to me the residents of the country, who are many. And this response was somewhat a consolation to the prayer leader, because he understood that his words had begun to penetrate into the guard's ears. Because the words he spoke with regard the first time, and the words he spoke now had gathered together until they made an impact on his heart, because the tshuva, repentance answer that the God answered, what can I do, etc., made it known that the words of the prayer leader had now circulated into his heart. And so the prayer leader went to another God and spoke with him as above, and he too did not listen. And finally he also responded as above. I am only a single person against all the residents, etc. And so all the gods answered him, this tshuva, answered him, this tshuva in the end. Answered him, this tshuva in the end. And so all the gods answered him, this tshuva in the end. Nanach, nachman, meuman. Afterwards the prayer leader entered the city, and he began to speak with them, as he was accustomed, that they are all greatly mistaken, and that money is not their purpose at all, only the main purpose, that people should only delve in Torah, study and prayer, etc. And they did not listen to him, for they were all deeply entrenched in for they were all deeply entrenched in this for a long time, and they told him about the warrior, and that they want to send to the country where they are all gods, etc. He laughed at them too, and he told them that. And he told them that was foolishness, and that they all are only humans, etc., and that they would not be able to help them at all. Because you are human. Because you are human, and then they are human, and not any God. There is only one God. Blessed be he, etc. And regarding the warrior, he said to them in amazement, can this be ye, the warrior? And there's someone wondering, the one whom I know. They did not understand what he meant. And then so he went from one to another, and he spoke with all of them so. And regarding the warrior, he said to every, can this be the warrior, etc. But they did not understand what he meant. Meanwhile, a commotion broke out in the city, that someone was present who was speaking such things. Laughter of the faith, that someone was present who was speaking such things, making laughter above the faith, saying that there is only one, etc., and saying about the warrior as above. They understood that this must be the prayer leader, since he was already publicized to them. They ordered to seek him and catch him, even though he always appeared in a different way, i.e. one moment appearing as a merchant, another moment as a pauper, etc. Nonetheless, they knew of this also, that the prayer leader always appeared differently, so they made orders to probe after him and then catch him. They searched after him, eventually catching him, and they brought him to their ministers. They began talking with him, but he told them the same things as above, that they are all in great mistake and foolishness, and that this is not their purpose at all, that money is not the purpose at all, but that there is only one who is the blessed creator, etc., and that the people of that country, that they say are all gods, will not be able to help them, because they are only human. They considered him insane because all the countrymen were so entrenched in their error of money and had become so foolish Someone who spoke contrary to their folly was considered by them to be insane. And they asked him, what is this you say about the warrior? Could this be the warrior? He answered them, because I was with the king, and with the king a warrior, Gavawad lost. And if this is that warrior, I know him. And furthermore, you're trusting in that country where you say they are all gods. This is foolishness, because they will not be able to help you at all. On the contrary, that will be your downfall if you put your trust in them. And they asked him, how do you know this? He answered them, it was like this. The king whom he was with had a hand. That is, he had something like a hand with 5 fingers, and with all the lines that are on a hand. And they have with 5 fingers, and with all the lines that are on a hand. And the hand was like a map of all the worlds, everything that ever was, from time of the creation of heaven and earth until the end, and that which will be afterwards. It was all depicted on this hand, because depicted in the lines of this hand were the configuration of each and every world, with all of its details as depicted on a map, and on the lines were as if letters, like on a map, where letters are written next to each and everything to know what it is, namely that this is a certain city and this is a certain river, etc. In exactly the same way there were imprinted via the lines of the hands, or the likeness of letters, so that the letters were imprinted next to each and everything depicted on the hand, in order to know what it represented. And likewise all the various countries and cities and rivers and bridges and mountains and other details that are found in the world and in all the worlds. It was all depicted, it all was depicted on the heaven by the lines. And next to each thing were written letters, that this is this thing, this is that thing, and also all the people who go around in any country and all their experiences, all that happens to a man in his life, was all depicted there, and written on it were all the roads from country to country and from place to place. And hence I know how to enter this country, which was impossible for any man to enter it. And so if you want to send me to another city, I also know the way. All the ways can be known via the hand, and so imprinted on the hand was the way from world to world, for there is a way and a path along which one can ascend from earth to heaven. For the reason why it is impossible to ascend to the heaven is because people do not know the way, but on it was depicted the way to ascend to heaven, and on it and on it were depicted all the paths between from world to world. For Eliyahu ascended to heaven along one path, and this path was written there. Moses ascended to heaven on another path, which was also written there. And also Enoch ascended to heaven on another path, and this too was written there. And so on from world to higher world. They are all depicted in the lines of the hand. Nanach, nachma, meuman. Also depicted on this hand was each and everything, as it was at the time the world was created, and as it is now, and as it will be afterwards. For instance, Sodom, what was depicted on it as it had been during its settlement before it was overturned. Also depicted on it was the overturning of Sodom, and so depicted everywhere was the form of Sodom after its overturning. For depicted on this hand were whatever has been, whatever is now, and whatever will be. And there on the hand I saw that the country about which you say they are all gods, together with all the people who come to them to get help from them, they will all be eradicated and destroyed. All this is what? All this is. All this is what the prayer leader answered them. The thing was big. This thing was a big revelation for them, for they recognized They were words of truth, because this is known that upon a map all things are depicted. They also understood that his words were true, because one can see that one can gather and connect two lines of the hand, making a letter from them. Therefore they understood this could not be fabricated from his heart, and it was a big revelation for them. They asked him, "Where is the king? Maybe he will show us a way to find money." He have answered them in a language of amazement, "You still want money? Of money speak nothing at all." They asked him, "Nonetheless, tell us where the king is." He answered them, "I also do not know where he is." And the story was like this. There was a king and queen, and they had an only daughter. And the time came close for her to be married off. And they seated advisors to give counsel who she should be married off to. And I too was there among the advisors, because the king liked me, and my advice was that they should give her the warrior, because the warrior had done many benefits for us, for he conquered many countries. Therefore it was fitting to give him the queen's daughter for a wife. My advice was very well accepted, and they all agreed with it, and there was a great joy there for having found a groom for the queen's daughter. They married her off to the warrior, and the queen's daughter had a child. And the baby was extremely handsome, with a beauty that was not human at all. With a beauty that was not human at all. His hair was of gold, and had all the colors, and his face was of the sun. And his eyes were luminaries of their own, on their own. And the child was born with mature wisdom, because they saw in him, as soon as he was born, that he was a great sage. Because when people were talking in the place where one need to laugh, he would laugh, and other such things. They recognized in him that he was a great sage, though he still laughed back the movements of an adult, namely the ability to speak and so forth. Nanach, nachman, meuman, and with the king was an orator, that is a speaker who was an expert in eloquence, and rhetoric, who was able to speak and compose wonderful poems, songs, and praises to the king. And the orator was himself also a nice orator, but the king showed him the way how to go up and get the power of the wisdom of rhetoric. And thereby he became a very, very wonderful orator. The king also had a sage. This sage was also a sage by himself. But the king showed him the way how to go up and get wisdom, and thereby he became an amazingly great sage. And similarly, the warrior himself was mighty on his own, but the king showed him the way how to go up and get strength, and thereby he became a wondrously great warrior. Because there is a sword that hangs in the air, and the sword has three powers. When the sword is lifted, then all the opposing army officers flee. So inevitably they fall. Because when the officers flee, there is no one to lead the battle, so they certainly fall. But despite this, the survivors may still be able to wage war. But the sword has two edges, and they have two powers, for by one edge they all fall, and by the other edge they get the sickness called dar, namely their flesh becomes meager and lifeless. As is known of this sickness, God spare us. So only by making a movement with this sword, wherever it is, the enemies are stricken in the above way, i.e. by what each side does, and the king showed. When the king, by what each side does, and the king showed the warrior the way that there is to this sword, and from there he attained his great strength. And to me too did the king show me the way for my thing. From there I got what I need, i.e. prayer. And then the king Oh yeah 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 yeah. And the king also had a faithful friend, nachman, literally faithful or true lover, who was in love with the king, literally loved himself with the king, with a very, very wondrously awesome love. They loved each other so much that it was completely impossible for them to be one without the other, so that they not see each other for some time. But there must be times when they needed to be separated for a while. They had portraits depicting the image of both of them. They would satisfy themselves with these portraits when they were separated from each other, and the images were so formed. How the king and his faithful friend love each other and hug and kiss each other with great love. And these images had the ability that whoever looked at these images attained a very great love, i.e. the trait of love would come to one who looked at the images. And the faithful friend also received the love from the place that the king showed him. And a time came when all of the above mentioned went, each one to his place to receive his power. That is the orator and the warrior, and all the king's people, each one ascended to his place to renew his power. And the day came, and there was a very great storm wind upon the world, and this storm wind mixed up the entire world and overturned sea to dry land and dry land to sea and wilderness to settlement and settlement to wilderness, and overturned the entire world. And the storm wind went into the king's house and did no damage there, except that the storm wind entered and snatched away the child of the queen's daughter. And amidst the commotion, as soon as the storm wind snatched away the precious child, the queen's daughter pursued after him, as did the queen and as did the king, until they were all scattered, and they knew not where they were. And we were all not there during all this, because we had gone up, each one to his place, to renew his power, as mentioned. And when we returned, we found none of them, as mentioned. The hand also was lost then, and since then we have all been scattered, and since then we are no longer able to go up, each one to his place, to renew his power, since after the entire world has been overturned and mixed up, all the locations of the world have been exchanged and changed, sea to dry land, etc. It is certainly impossible to go up along the original paths, because now we need different paths according to the change of the places. Therefore we have been no longer able to go up, each one to his place, to renew his powers. But the impression that remains by each of us, meaning the token, i.e. the little bit that has remained by each one from long ago, is also very great. And in this mighty one is the king's warrior. He is certainly a very mighty warrior. He is certainly a very mighty warrior. All this is what the prayer leader replied to the people. And they heard his words, and they were amazed, and were very amazed. And they held the prayer leader, and would not let him go from them, because perhaps the warrior coming to them was the warrior mentioned, whom the prayer leader had acquaintance with. And the warrior was continuously coming closer to the country each time. I'm sending his emissaries, until he arrived by them, and he stood outside the city and sent in his emissaries to them, for them to tell him whether they want to submit themselves or not. They were terrified of him, and they requested the prayer leader to give them advice. The prayer leader told them that it was necessary to inspect the manner and behavior of this warrior in order to thereby know if he is the king's warrior. The prayer leader went, and he went out to the warrior. Nanach, nachman, meuman. Nanach.